Ladies and gentlemen, Film Don't Lie on A2D Radio. We are back and sponsored by Alonzi Travel, specializing in creating the vacation of your dreams at Disney, Universal, or wherever your heart calls you. Let the talented team of travel experts, specifically myself, create a custom vacation for you. Those summer vacations, those trips coming up for families, you guys know that it's time to start planning, even if it's a year out. Those packages for Walt Disney World did open up. So if you're looking to plan one, make sure you hit me up so I can help you out with that. It is the post-draft recap show. We've got a lot to cover. You guys know I'm going to help you out covering the NFL. I talked, if you listened to Eagles Talk the other night, we talked in depth about, the Eagles picks and our reaction to that. But now I take you on a broader scope. We're going to talk about the NFL as a whole, the draft as a whole, my favorite picks, my least favorite picks, who I thought were winners and losers, or not losers, but like questionable head scratchers from the NFL draft. But I'm not going to be here by myself, unlike last week. I know last week I did a solo show. I went through all my rankings for my running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. But this week, I do have a guest with me yet again. You may recognize him. He was on here a few months ago. He is from the Eagles Pin Pull Network. He's a good friend of mine and one of the smartest film guys I know. It is Shane Haff. Shane, what's going on, man? Welcome back, and thank you for coming on once again.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I just came out of a sleep coma after binging all the NFL draft stuff, and I'm not sure what year it is or what day it is, but I'm always ready to talk more NFL.
Absolutely. I was on you guys' show, I think, a couple weeks ago now, and we got into the discussion how I have it rather easy compared to most other draft analysts or content creators that are out there, because I focus mainly on running backs. It's 80% of what I study, and then I dabble into other positions, so I have a general understanding. But guys like you, Johnny, and so many other guys, you guys dive into everything. I don't know how you guys find the time for it. So I have so much respect for you guys and what you do, because I'm already overwhelmed with what I do, and you guys do a lot of great work. So I always appreciate your mindset, and I look to you guys mainly when it goes to outside the positions. I do my cross checks. I look at what your guys work and what your takes are to see if anything that I miss in my gaps. So definitely be good to pick your brain here about the draft as a whole and what we think about this draft class. So it's going to be very interesting, because I forget if we touched on it. I think that the NFL kind of spoke, at least the Eagles at least did. I think overall this was kind of a weak class. I wasn't really a fan of it overall. Especially at the first round, I just didn't have a lot of first round grades. So at a macro point of view, before we get into the poll question, did you see it that way too? Did you feel like this class was just not that impressive from, as a whole, rounds 1 to 7?
Yeah, it wasn't one of my favorite classes at all. I felt like there was a glut of guys that you could take in the second round. There weren't a lot of guys after my top 10 or so that I really loved in the first round. And so, yeah, it really felt to me that there were a few guys at the top you wanted. And after that, it kind of became a toss up. And, I think you saw that with, there was a few teams that didn't get the memo about trading up, but I think you saw that with just the lack of trades relative to previous years in the first round. And, it wasn't my favorite class in terms of top end talent. I did think there was a lot of kind of depth that you could go after, but it was a good year to have a top 5 pick, and maybe not a good year to be in the teens.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. As the middle of that round was going through, I'm like, And there's one team, we'll get into that. If you don't mention it, I definitely will. That I was like, you really traded up for that guy. So we'll get into that, but we'll get into one other trade up in our poll question. The Jaguars made the right move in trading up for Travis Hunter. Agree or disagree? I'll let you lead this, because this was very interesting. I know a lot of people had takes on it initially when the trade happened, because it was a lot. They gave up, obviously the pick swap, and then they gave up their second round pick, a fourth round pick, and then their first next year in a better quarterback class. Now the Jags don't need a quarterback, but that is still another first rounder. and that is a haul. A lot of people felt like it was too much of a haul initially, but considering who they traded up for and who the Browns ended up getting at 5, what are your thoughts on the trade now, looking back on seeing how everything unfolded? Do you think it was worth it for this new regime in Jacksonville?
Yeah, so I plugged in all the stuff into my trade value calculators, and I went through and assigned some pick values, some outcomes for that first round pick, just to see where it would come out. Because obviously the Jags believe they're going to be a good football team. Otherwise, you're probably not trading that future first round pick. And basically, if the Jaguars won the Super Bowl next year, my calculator says that they still overpaid by the value of about the 20th overall pick to move up.
Mm-hmm.
If they had the 15th pick in the draft next year, they overpaid by about a top 10 pick. And if they end up with a top 5 pick, like they have in 3 of the last 5 years, they essentially overpaid by the value of like the second overall pick. And so, I mean, we can say we will see. If they don't make the playoffs this year, it's bad. And if they end up with, a top 10 pick, it's just a disaster. That honestly, it's a disaster on the proportion that should get a GM fired after his first year. But to me, my general rule is, if you're trading a future first round pick in a trade up that's not for a quarterback, it's a bad move. And so I didn't like the move at all. I thought it was a massive overpay to move up those spots. And I know Travis Hunter is an incredible player. I graded him out as a blue chip defensive back prospect and a red chip wide receiver prospect. However, I don't think the logic can be like, we're counting this guy as 2 picks, because I just remain thoroughly unconvinced that Travis Hunter is going to be able to do what no one in the last 40 years in the NFL has been able to do, and that's play both sides of the football. So I don't think that's going to work. If that's the rationale, like I love the player. I remain skeptical that he's going to be able to play significant snaps on both sides of the ball. If he could do that, then maybe that's worth it. But outside of a guy that can legitimately like play all pro levels on both sides of the ball or a quarterback, I'm just not trading a future first to move up.
Yeah, I understand that. I disagree to the poll as well. Reasons you made, and the fact that it's not a quarterback, I think that is like, that's the thing. It's a wide, and I think there's another factor is a lot of uncertainty into what he's going to project to, not at a talent level, but usage. And that's where I am just not certain. I'm with you. I love the player. I think he is a fascinating player. He's a unicorn. And if in my lifetime, if there's anyone that was going to be able to play both sides, at least to an extent, I think it's Travis Hunter. I think he's just an amazing football player, and he loves the game. So I am rooting for him. I totally believe in him and the player. But let's get into, like, okay, so first I'll say this. I understand where they're coming from, because if you are a new regime, the Jaguars have severely disappointed so far, especially in the Trevor Lawrence era, right? You want to really make a culture changing or culture stamping move, right? Like, you want to make an impression as a new GM, new head coach in there, and you want to say, hey, we are changing things up. And I know I was watching the Pivot podcast, their reaction show, and Fred Taylor, the great Fred Taylor, who I love, he's one of my favorites. He advocated for this move, and he loved the move because he does see Travis Hunter as that like franchise type of like cornerstone player, which I understand. And from that standpoint, if you believe he is that, then go ahead, and I get it. I think that now the question is, can you make it work? And that's where I want to pick your brain, because I'm a little bit, I don't have the capacity to, I don't have the complete capacity to understand, to see how exactly they could make him, because they said the same things as the Browns. They said they see him primarily as a receiver and then partially as a corner. Greg Gasol had made the case that, like, you can't really do it. You can't be a package corner. I understand how if you absolutely see him as like an elite wide receiver, which I totally get, the projection is there. He has that talent and that upside. But like usage wise, like, how do you make that work? How do you make him a full-time wide receiver and then a package player on defense. I don't know the ins and outs of defense to that extent to have an answer for that. So is that something that you think is even possible? Or is that really not like realistic to say like, hey, he's only going to be in a package of plays for, as corner?
Yeah, I don't see how you do a guy like playing part-time cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time in the past when it could have worked if like he was going to be your slot corner. And so he's going to be off the field for 50% of the snaps because we're going to be in base personnel, but that's not even the modern NFL anymore. Like nickel is the new base. Is he going to be your dime back? I feel like most teams just stay in nickel all the time. They don't get into dime very often. Or are you saying you're just going to use him on third down or use him in the red zone? Well, does that mean there's only a few defenses we're going to call in the red zone or on third down? Because if that's the case, now we're tipping our hand like, hey, Travis Hunter's on the field. It's a third down. We're playing man coverage. And you don't want to live in that world either, because even if he can lock down wide receiver 1, he should probably just be a corner anyways at that point. But wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, or you got other cornerbacks that can win in man coverage when the offense knows pre-snap, like this is the defense, that's a dangerous world to live in. And so I don't know how that works. And practically, like, I just don't, how does it look in practice? Like, how is he NFL players hit the rookie wall all the time. How are we going to have him playing double the snap counts of most NFL rookies at 185 pounds, by the way, which is small for both positions? Mm-hmm. How are we going to have him grasping a full defensive playbook and a full offensive playbook? I just don't understand how it works. And to be honest, I don't trust the Jaguars to be the team that figures it out. They don't have a history of being well run. It's their first year with a new coaching staff. So it's not like it's a coach that's been there for forever and everybody knows the system and you're integrating one new player trying to do different things. It's all of this at once. Yeah. I just don't see how it works. And I don't see how you can plan for it. Like, you get into training camp and all of a sudden you thought he was going to be full-time wide receiver and play a little corner, and he's struggling offensively, but he looks good on his defensive drills. Well, now he's a corner. What does that do to wide receiver? Like, it's really hard to plan for what you're going to do. I don't know how this works realistically. It's fun to think about. It's fun to talk about. And if it works, it would be awesome. It just seems like the pathway for that working is relatively small.
It is very relatively small. And that's the thing that kind of gets me hung up. And then to why I think it's a little bit too much for them to have done the move is because like, if they want to make him a wide receiver mainly, right? So was that worth it to trade up for a wide receiver? Like, even like the best wide receiver, like if he turns into like a top 2 wide receiver in the league, right? Is that still, can you justify that? I guess if they make the playoffs, they make a deep playoff run and that pick is later on, by your formula, you said it's still an overpay slightly, but I mean, if he's elite, okay, I guess so. And I think another aspect of we have to look at it too is you gave Trevor Lawrence an extension. He's been a disappointment so far. I guess I can see it from the fact that you got to make Trevor Lawrence work. You've got to, there's no more excuses. You've got to get him the help, get him the support. You've got an offensive-minded coach. You've got to make him work. So I get wanting to plug him in mainly at wide receiver to help with that. And then they got Tootin in the 4th round. And I see him as like pretty much the heir apparent to Travis Etienne. So you got, an explosive weapon. So they are trying their best to say, hey, like, we are going to make sure we are good on offense and that there are no more question marks. So I understand that point, but it is a very, very steep price to pay. And you have to make sure everything hits to the level that you expect it to, because if you don't, that is you're really setting yourself back. And that, like you said, the margin is so slim to be able to do that. So it's a very risky move. I think there is a pathway for it could work out for them, but it is very, very tough. It's a very tough path to see like it working out. But I'm hoping for him because I think that, again, I love the player, what he can bring. It's tough to really grasp at this second, to see how it'll make it work. So I don't know. it'll be interesting, and we'll keep our eyes on like as the months go, how training camp goes, and what he's going to be doing, and we'll see how that unfolds. But let's get to the other parts of the draft. So we are going to go. I frame this as like our favorite picks, whether it be a player that went as a steal, because great value at where they got picked, or they went to like the perfect fit for them. I have several. I said like we'll each name three. If we have overlap, we'll be able to name more. But like I have several to pick from. But I'll start with you. Name your first favorite pick from this draft.
Yeah, the first one that just popped into my mind before I really even thought about it was Tyler Warren to the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had a desperate need at tight end, and it reminds me of like a few years ago when the Steelers picked Najee Harris in the first round, and like literally every mock draft that ever came out was like, oh, the Steelers are going to take Najee Harris, which was not a good idea, but they did it anyways. Almost every mock draft you ever looked at had the Colts taking a tight end, except it was Colston Loveland. And they had this desperate need. And then Colston Loveland comes off the board first, and they saw the top guy fall to them. And so I thought that, for them to understand the board, to stay where they were at, not that you want to be moving up for a tight end to begin with, but to get who I had as the best tight end in the draft at your original pick, it was the best player. It was the best fit. And you don't want to go into draft with a glaring need, but they did, and they ended up with the best player at the position anyways. So I thought that was a great value pick for them. Perfect landing spot. Sidebar, he played some Wildcat quarterback in college. He played high school quarterback. He might be the best quarterback in the Colts room too. So he might end up being the Colts starting quarterback. Who knows?
Oh my God. I love that fit as well. I think that, to piggyback off of that, you mentioned there were a lot of people that were surprised Loveland went first, but I don't understand the pushback because they're two totally different types of tight ends, and they went to the places that fit them. I don't think Warren, the type of tight end he is, really would have made sense for the Bears and what they're trying to do. Whereas the vice versa could be said for Loveland. I don't think he makes sense for what the Colts were trying to do. And, there were a lot of people had Warren as like a unanimous or bona fide tight end one, but I don't know how you had him ranked. I personally had Loveland as my tight end one by like a hair. And I know several people that did as well. I think it's just a matter of what you were looking for. That's the difference is what fits the type of offense you're running. And so with the Colts and Warren, it made so much sense. And I was kind of glad that he did fall because he went to a place where he's going to be used very, very well. So I completely agree with you on that. The way I did my three, I did a first round or day 1, day 2, and day 3 so I could kind of have a little bit of variance. So my day 1 guy that I'll say, and I'm gonna try not to include Eagles because I did love the Jahad Campbell pick. Like I was over the moon, but I talked about that on Eagles Talk. So outside of the Jahad Campbell pick, I did really like the Malachi Starks pick to the Ravens. I think it just made so much sense. I know there were question marks, and I was listening to you and Johnny's draft your pod when you did the show with the draft 1 or day 1 draft targets for the Eagles, and you guys went in conversation with Starks, and I know Johnny had very, very fair question marks regarding Starks, and his question marks from this past season, right? But I think that the tape he showed in 2023 with his intangibles and his skill set, it just makes a ton of sense with the Ravens within what they do. Pairing him with Kyle Hamilton, who now was playing more traditional safety for the Ravens this past season. It's just such it wouldn't surprise me if they are very quickly the best safety tandem in the league. And it's very fun to be able to project what they're going to be able to do in that defense. So I loved Malachi Starks to the Ravens.
Yeah, that was actually my second one. And for a lot of the reasons you said, like playing next to Kyle Hamilton, that's going to be a blast. There's so many things they can do similarly. I think you'll see Hamilton move back to being more of like their star type of position, and Starks will be more their safety, but Starks can do a lot of the same things. And so they can spin coverages and they can do some different things because now they have two of those guys. And that's one of the things that I talk about a lot is when you have a player with that unique, versatile skill set, unless you have a second guy that can do all the same things, it makes it hard to still like disguise things. Like, Kyle Hamilton can be a linebacker or a slot corner or a safety, but if there's only two safeties on the field, he's probably a safety for this play. If there's three safeties, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess he's a slot or a linebacker. If all of a sudden you've got another guy, and it can really flip things up. It's one of the same reasons I like the Jahad Campbell pick for the Eagles, just to talk about him a bit, is because you've got two off-ball linebackers that used to be edge rushers, and you have the ability to all of a sudden break a huddle with Zach Bond on the line of scrimmage. So it makes it a 5-man front, and you get the offensive line to set their protections, whoever they call out as the mic, say it's Jahad Campbell, and then all of a sudden he shifts over to the other edge, and now you get Zach Bond coming back into the box off the line, and it just makes things very complicated, protection-wise for the offense. So I really liked both of those picks in the first round. I guess I can call out a different guy here, though, since you just talked about Starks, different safety. It was Xavier Watts going off the board. I think it was to the Falcons at 96. I think it was the Falcons at 96.
I had him listen to. Yep.
Yeah. I gave him a first round grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's who I wanted the Eagles to pick when they took Andrew Makuba. And I understand why they took Makuba, because with Xavier Watts, there are some athleticism things. Yeah. He's a little slower. And I put in my scouting report for him that he's going to be best playing near the line of scrimmage, which is obviously not something the Eagles do. So I had him far and away rated as the better player than Makuba from a fit standpoint. I understand why the Eagles went the direction they did. But Xavier Watts falling to the end of the third round of the Falcons, I thought was also a really good pick.
Yeah, it makes sense for them because someone made a comparison to him and Justin Simmons, because they I guess I can see some of that, but I think Justin Simmons is better on the back end than Watts, like you said. But Watts is so smart where he lacks with that athleticism. He's very, very, his processing and his field vision and his decision making and the way he sees things is very, very good. And I like his ability, closer to the line of scrimmage. So I do like that pick a lot. That was one that I was going to mention as well. Listed a little further down on my list, but it's on my list. For my day 2 favorite pick, I had several to choose from. I'll just mention some of my honorable mentions for day 2, like Nick Emanwari to the Seahawks made so much sense. Omar Norman Lott to the Chiefs, such a good one. RJ Harvey to the Broncos, I jumped off my seat for that. I love that. I love that Sean Payton saw what I saw in RJ Harvey. He absolutely deserved to go there like that early in the draft. So I love that. But if I were to pick my favorite overall from day 2, because I kind of called it with the Seahawks, it's Jalen Milroe. When they traded Geno, I said they are probably going to look to draft a quarterback. And when I was mapping out for Jalen Milroe, the few landing spots that made sense, Seahawks were at the top of my list. So it was just another this was everything I wanted for a landing spot and for a fit, because he goes to a place that's building. I like what Mike McDonald and them are building in Seattle. He goes to a spot where he doesn't have to play right away. They got Sam Darnold there, but Sam Darnold's not even committed financially. There's not a ton committed to him financially beyond this year. And so, there he can sit and develop for a year or two before being plugged in as a starter. And it just makes a ton of sense for what they do. And I love that. I love that he's there. It just perfect fit. And he was one of my favorite. And I know that there are a lot of concerns in terms of as a quarterback, he's got to have more touch, and there are things, nuances from the position that he has to absolutely work on. But when you're talking about day 2 quarterbacks, I always say if you're picking if you're picking a quarterback outside of day 1, you might as well just swing for a guy that has some upside. That he's going to be riskier. Obviously, there's the floor is going to be a lot lower for some of these guys that you're projecting. But if you're talking about day 2, day 3 even, I mean, it's less on day 3, but day 2 guys swing for the fences. And so Jalen Murrow is that guy, and I think in the 3rd round, perfect spot for him. Perfect, in terms of where he was taken, really good value to me. Like very, 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 very good value. So Jalen Murrow was my day 2 favorite pick. I don't know what you think about Murrow to the Seahawks.
Yeah, I thought that was a great pick. I really liked that landing spot for him. For a lot of the reasons you said, he doesn't come in and have to start right away. I think his athleticism is great. He's a guy that might be a year away from being a year away when it comes to a passer, but you have Sam Darnold there already. And I don't love Sam Darnold, but it gives him some time. And I think he's a guy that you can get on the field. Like you can do some things with him, in his rookie season to get him some reps on the field. But, athleticism is the way of the future for quarterback. And it gives you a certain floor when you have athleticism. And so for it to be a weaker QB draft and for him to still, be there in the 90s, I think it was where they got him, I thought it was great value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another, I was listening to Mina Kimes, she's a Seahawks fan. She was all over this and she gave her thoughts, but something that she did point out that I also I didn't realize till she mentioned, but it was a great, great point. When people talk about bringing in an athletic quarterback or running quarterback to be, for package plays, right? Like we did it with Hurts and it really was wonky. It didn't really work out as well as they wanted to, and everything like that. When teams usually say that, executing it doesn't really work. However, with Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator there, he was in New Orleans and he had Taysom Hill. So there is a pedigree of him knowing how to use package plays for a sub quarterback, right? An athletic quarterback. So if there was any coach that knows how to actually make that work and execute it well, it's Kubiak. He's one of the very few. So that's where Seahawks they're one of the teams that can pull it off, where you have a set package of plays for your mobile QB. So it's again a way to get him on the field a bit in that first or second year with Sam Darnold. It just makes so much sense. So your third guy, your third favorite pick from this draft class.
Yeah, the Shadur Sanders to the Browns in the 5th round. I'm not a Shadur Sanders guy. I gave him, he fell out of, so we can have a little bit of the Shadur conversation, but
oh my God, we talked about it last, it was such a good conversation. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So he fell out of the 1st round because he didn't have 1st round tape.
Yes. Yep.
I gave him a 2nd round grade in
so
my stuff.
Yep.
And now he fell out of the 2nd round because of how he handled the draft process.
Yep.
And, that's certainly understandable. Once we get to day 3, there literally isn't a team in the NFL that should have passed on him. Like you get to the 4th round, I don't care what the team is, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, there is not a team that I understand passing on him in the 4th round, because at the end of the day, quarterback is the most valuable position in pro sports. And how often do we see a quarterback injured for 2 or 3 weeks and you've got to bring the backup in and you want to try to win a few games? Like backup quarterback is important. Maybe not important enough to take the guy in the 2nd round like the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts when they had Carson Wentz, although it worked out and maybe they knew some things that weren't public knowledge at the time. But backup quarterback is important and smart teams invest in that. And so if you've got a guy that you have 2nd round tape on and there's some concerns with his maturity level and some other things, you take the guy in the 4th round, like bring him in. If it all works out, you got what is potentially a starting quarterback in the future for a day 3 pick. And if it doesn't work out, you cut bait and it's a 4th round pick. Who cares? So I thought once you're in day 3, honestly, every team that came on the clock and didn't take him, I think it was a mistake. And I know when the Browns traded up in front of the Eagles and took him, I think it was Schefter, it might have been Rappaport. One of the guys said that they believed the Eagles were about to take him. And Eagles fans are like, why would the Eagles do that? Because it would have been the smart move. It doesn't matter that you have Tanner McKee is 2 years into a contract that lasts 4 years. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's nothing. Like I fully believe the Eagles were going to take Shedeur Sanders and bring him in as a QB2, QB3 developmental piece. And you just cut bait. If he comes in as a locker room issue, get him out of there. It doesn't cost you anything. So I thought that was a great value pick. And I honestly thought I understood why he fell out of day 2. I thought the NFL was crazy that he didn't go immediately on day 3.
On round 4, yeah. I think that, people bring up their rebuttal to, like, why would you bring in someone like that even to be your backup? They don't want the drama with the backup. But the thing is, if you're taking him in day 3, if there is drama, like you said, it's much easier to just cut bait because it's a day 3 pick. Like, the investment now is not that much. It's not really that crazy. So you're not losing out on a ton. So the risk, it's all about like managing risk, right? Like, what is the return on investment, and what can I lose on that investment if it doesn't work out? And once you get into round 4, round 5, it's just like the upside of, when I say upside, it's not upside of him being a great quarterback. It's the upside of, I spent a round 4 pick on him. He can be a quality backup or a fringe starter. Like, that's good investment to kind of gamble on. So it's weighing that. I think that, I had said, and I tweeted this out. I don't know if you saw, but I was, in all seriousness, and I was not trolling, I thought the perfect place once he got into day 3 was going to be the Cowboys, because in all seriousness, they were going to be the one team that would welcome some of that marketability. And Dion, his relationship with Jerry Jones and that franchise, they are the one franchise that could really like put up with all the Dion antics, and all the baggage that comes with Deion Sanders coming in, and him being a potential head coach for whatever team Sanders goes to. That would have been welcome in the Cowboys. And again, not even trolling it, it just made sense. Now, he didn't go to the Cowboys. He eventually did go to the Browns, but the conversation of like, should he have gone in round 4 is a legitimate one. And so I hear you on that. I totally hear you on that. It's a good conversation to have. I think for me, I understood in as a whole why he fell out of day 2. I think the one pick for me that kind of was just like, I think this is a little silly, is when the Browns took Dylan Gabriel in round 3, because not only are you taking a quarterback, you're taking a quarterback that I thought I had like a 5th, 6th round grade on him. It's not only you taking a quarterback, you're reaching for a quarterback that I felt was a massive reach. He shouldn't have been. You take the Deion Sanders part, the Shedeur Sanders part out of it. Dylan Gabriel shouldn't have sniffed, in my opinion, day 2. So that's where I'm just like, that's gone a little too far. I think that's a little crazy. But outside of that, yeah, I totally understood him falling out of day 2. Browns just they kind of botched the process of the whole thing, and then they drafted two quarterbacks in one draft. That's funny. My final favorite pick from the draft class, and I'm going to go into day 3. Again, there were a couple in day 3 that I really, really liked. I did honorable mention. I did like Billy Bowman to the Falcons. You mentioned the Falcons again. I liked him. I just like the way he plays, even though he's undersized. But I mentioned this guy. I pounded the table for him on your show. I'll just continue to pound the table for him. There's no way I can't say Kyle Monangai to the Bears in 7th round. Like, it's when I have a round 3 grade on him and he falls to the 7th round and goes to a place where he has a legitimate shot to be the David Montgomery role in Ben Johnson's offense. I think it's such a good landing spot for him. People will mention Roschon Johnson. He was a 3rd round pick for them a couple years ago, and how Roschon people will try to say that Roschon will be slated to be the David Montgomery role. I don't know about that yet. I did like Roschon coming out, but he hasn't been that good so far with the Bears, and they have a new regime there. They did not draft him, from what I remember. I don't think they were the ones that drafted him, but I think Kyle Monangai does offer a little bit more creativity and a little bit more than what Roshan Johnson does. So if you ask me, if Kyle Monangai gets a legitimate shot, like a real shot at RB2, I do think he beats out Roshan. Whether he gets that shot as a 7th round pick, that's the question. Because 7th round picks, 6th round picks, it's again, the investment there isn't high at all. So there is no real guarantee that these prospects will get a chance to move up the depth chart, at least not in the first year. So maybe Monangai sits for a year or two, but I think you give him a legitimate chance, he can be that David Montgomery for Ben Johnson in Chicago. So I loved Kyle. I call it, look, I will still pound the table for Kyle Monangai as one of the most underrated running backs from this class that didn't get enough love. So I loved him. I don't know if you looked at him or you, Johnny, looked at him after I had mentioned him on your show.
Yeah, I never got around to looking at him, but I knew you loved the guy. And so I was pulling for him as the Eagles would come up on the clock. I was like, let's just go get him. Go get me a running back. And they didn't do it. But yeah, I thought of you when he came off the board. I was like, that Chux is going to be a Bears fan part-time now.
Yeah. I was hoping, if it wasn't to the Eagles, I was hoping he'd go to a very good landing spot. And I liked that landing spot for him. So I thought it was very, very good. So I'm pleased, and I'm pulling for him really, really hard. All right, so let's get to the opposite end. So we talked about favorite picks. Let's talk about our least favorite or our head scratchers, guys for the opposite reason, right? So I didn't have as many because I think that like I'm usually, when it comes to evaluating and this stuff, like I try to be optimistic as possible because I don't like rooting against prospects, but there were definitely some head scratchers here. So you lead the way. You started off your first head scratcher or reach or whatever from this draft.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned my number one, which is Dylan Gabriel at 94 to the Browns, and that's just terrible value. He should have been a late day 3 or a UDFA guy, and I mean, I liked what the Browns did trading out of pick number 2 to move back and to number 5. And then to go from that to, I mean, is this really the franchise that was in the place to draft 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs? Like they had 7 total picks and they spent 4 of them on quarterbacks and running backs while having a really good running back already. I just thought their draft was kind of in shambles after, like, I liked the trade down, and then I thought it was awful. Their reach for Carson Schlesinger at 33. I didn't understand taking Judkins at 36. I didn't like Fannin as a prospect, and they took him at 67. Like,
I agree.
As much as I did like Dylan Sampson, but as much as I glowingly spoke about them being the one to throw the dart at Shadur Sanders, I thought they easily had one of the worst drafts. And Dylan Gabriel at 94 is the worst pick of that to me. Honestly, the only NFL team I would have been okay with taking Dylan Gabriel, because I think it'd be a perfect fit, is the Dolphins. I mean, he's the lefty that throws short intermediate of the field on timing routes and RPOs. Like he's a smaller Tua. And I'm not crazy about that prospect, that profile. I'm not crazy about Tua, but that's the only place he really made sense to me. And I just thought that was egregious by Cleveland.
It was egregious. He was on my list as well. And I talked about it already. It's just horrible. That whole process by the Browns for this draft is bad. I'm gonna, day one questionable pick. I'm gonna say it. I know that Giants fans are excited, but Jackson Dart, to where he went that early, I don't know what grade you had on Dart. I had a 3rd round grade on him.
Same.
But okay, good. If you're hopeful on Jackson Dart, I know there are NFL guys out there in the media. Peter Schrager thought the Giants had the best day one of the draft because he loved the move. So if you like Dart that much, then this move makes sense. I do not like Dart. I don't think he's that type of prospect. So the Giants trading up to the late 1st and getting him, it just screamed Giants all over again. It just them making an overreactionary move for a quarterback that just isn't good. It reminds me of, I know they didn't trade up for him at the time, but like their process of drafting Daniel Jones, which was very, very questionable. I don't know why they have this tendency to reach for quarterbacks that are not graded or valued that highly, and they just reach for these guys because they see something. I don't know, but that one to me was just, yeah, I can't give them. I loved everything they did outside of that pick. I thought they had a really good job outside that pick, but I'm not going to give them an A because I just thought that trading for Jackson Dart, the prospect, was just very, very, very silly.
Yeah, I'm so I don't like the Dart pick. However, I mean, what they gave up, they moved up from the first or second pick of the second round, and they gave up like a third and a future third. I didn't think the price was ridiculous.
It wasn't, yeah, the price wasn't.
And then, I mean, so at that point, relative to the position, it becomes a lower cost dart throw. I didn't love it at all. And I'm not big on the like, let's not take the quarterback early because we think we can get him later. Like if you have confidence in the guy, you get him. And I'm not saying they should have drafted him at 3. That would have been even worse. But if you don't feel comfortable drafting the quarterback in the top 5, 10, I just don't know that I love trading up to get him later either. So I'm with you on that. I wasn't particularly fond of Jackson Dart. I will say, I mean, at least they got a dart throw and it was relative to others QB picks. It was a lower cost thing, but again, Shadur Sanders in the 4th. Not that they knew he was going to go there, would be a lot better deal for them.
Yep, I totally hear that. And it's just like the other quarterbacks that have a history of falling. You talk about Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, and I know that there is precedent for late first-round quarterbacks working out. Absolutely. But I had a high grade on Lamar Jackson. I didn't study the draft when Aaron Rodgers was slipped, but like a lot of people from back then, they thought Aaron Rodgers was that early of a talent. There's no way. 3rd round grade on Dart. There's no way I would have touched him in the first round. No way. So that's why I picked that out. All right. Your second questionable pick from the draft.
Yeah. We can keep the quarterback train rolling with Tyler Shaw at 40 to the Saints. I mean, he's a 7th-year senior, right? He's literally older than Brock Purdy. And I mean, this is a bad Saints team that is going to have to go through a year or two of cap hell to reset your roster. And you're doing it with a 26-year-old quarterback that's injury prone. I didn't like what the Saints did. I thought Kelvin Banks at 9 was a pretty big reach, which it just goes back to their trade with the Eagles to get Trevor Penning, who didn't pan out. And then you have to get Talisi Fuaga last year, and this was a reach. Like they should have done something different at pick 9. It was too rich for Banks. And then they chased that with pick 40 being Tyler Shaw. I just really didn't like what the Saints did over their first 2 picks, but particularly, I don't know what you do. I mean, you don't pay Derek Carr, which it's too late. You can't fix that now, but I don't know what you do, but that's not it. Like that's not the draft pick there. So I didn't like what the Saints did the first 2 picks of the draft at all.
Yeah, Saints have this reputation now going on where they just continue to reach. I think they made that, from what I remember, I forget which year it was. Remember they made a trade with the Eagles, and then it ended up they traded up, gave up a lot. We got a good haul in that deal, and they made a trade up, and it ended up being for Olave. And I was just like, you traded that much for a wide receiver? Like, and I liked Olave at the time, but it's a bunch of like questionable. Like, why are you spending this capital constantly?
Yeah, that was 2022. If I recall correctly, though, I think they picked Olave first, and then they traded back up for Trevor Penning with the Eagles. That draft. They had 2 firsts. They took Olave and Penning.
Yes.
I had in my head they traded up for Penning because I was dunking on Saints fans when he got kicked out of training camp for fighting teammates. But either way, it was that draft. They took Olave and Penning both in the first round in 22.
Yeah, it's just, again, I don't know what their direction is. I have a friend that's a Saints fan, and I do feel bad because he's a good friend of mine, but I don't know if I ever told you, I loathe the Saints. So seeing
Mhm.
them struggle is delight to me. I just don't know what their process is, and I found it funny because I think it was Ted Wynn from the Athletic tweeted out a clip of Shuck, and he made the comparison to Derek Carr. So it's like this the Saints drafted the next Derek Carr, which okay, I can absolutely see that. So my next guy for day two, questionable pick. Tesla to the Lions. I I felt there were other wide receivers at that point that I definitely thought were better. Now I get like he's got intriguing athleticism, and usually for those guys who have like that great athletic profile and just raw, okay, third round, you can kind of if you love him that much, okay. But again, it's a lot of it is a work in progress. There were few wide receivers I felt would have made more sense at 70th overall for the Lions than Tesla. So I question that. Did you study Tesla a lot?
Nope, I didn't. He's not even a
I,
guy that I watch.
yeah, I didn't watch him initially, and when they took it, I'm like, I didn't even have this guy. So I looked and I watched some stuff, and I'm like, okay, like I see the athletic profile, but like he's a work in progress. Like he needs a lot of development. He's so many things are raw, and he also doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. So I don't know. I think it coincides with like I don't understand why Jalen Noel fell that
Mhm.
far, and he was available at the time. And just like if you need a wide receiver, I guess I understand that they're different types a little bit, but you could have Noel can play Z. You know, he doesn't have to overlap with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I don't know. That was a head scratcher. Like Tesla, I don't understand him. And then if you wanted a vertical stretch guy, Torrey Horton was there too. I had Torrey Horton. I had like a late third, early fourth. So like even he would have made a little bit more sense to me than Tesla. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. That was questionable to me.
Yeah, it looks like he was number 168 on the mock draftable big board or consensus big board.
It's
So
just a big board, yeah.
yeah, he was way down there. I was looking to see who else was available at the time. Yeah, Jalen Noel was there. Jalen Royals,
Jalen
Jalen
Royals,
Lane, a lot of Jalen's I liked.
Jalen, yeah.
Elik Iomanner was a guy that I couldn't believe fell as far as he did. I had a second round grade on him, and he fell all the way to the comp picks in the fourth round. So that's a guy. Of course, he's not like a speed guy, but he's a guy that I really liked as well. So
Yeah, I did. I wasn't as high on him, but I would have totally understood him a lot more, than Tesla. Like that would have made sense. But yeah, I don't know. That's why it's a
especially
head
for a
scratch.
team that wants to just run the ball, and
Yeah,
Iomanner is kind of like your big power slot, good run blocker type guy. So
exactly,
I
exactly,
wanted the
exactly.
Eagles to draft him for that reason.
Yeah, that would have made sense. I could have seen that on day three.
People
So
were like, he can't catch. And I was like, he doesn't need to catch. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith will catch. Just go block somebody.
oh
Go
my
block a
god,
linebacker and we're good.
I think it was a Robert Mays I was listening to, and I think he comped him to like how Romeo Dobbs is, where there's just questionable hands, but like he does so many other things good. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like I can see that comp. So go to a run first team where he doesn't have to catch as much. So
Yeah.
that would have made sense. Um, my last guy, I'll say questionable. So this is day three. I'm gonna go Woody Marks to the Texans. I had a fifth round, maybe later. I forget exactly what the round was, but like, pass catching back, space back. But he went fourth round. That it's hard to find a running back that is a reach on day three because usually that is where you get a really good value for some guys. But considering the Texans and where they're at, if I had told you what is one of their biggest needs going into the draft that they absolutely need to address, what would you have said?
Their first, second, and third needs in the draft were all offensive line.
Offensive line. They took one offensive lineman I think in the whole draft class. Which
Yeah.
okay, cool. You drafted one. You need more. So you need to take swings on day 3 on offensive line, not reach for a running back that's just a pass that like if they had taken one of the more talented guys, okay, that would have been a little bit better. But Woody Marks, like cool. I know what role he fills and he does it well, but he's not 4th round. That's a reach for a running back. I'm sorry. That is and especially concerning what you need to do for CJ Stroud. Yeah, I can't get behind that. So that was the head scratcher for me for day 3. I did not Texans. It's funny because like when you look at the Texans draft class as a whole, outside of Woody Marks, their picks you can be like, yeah, like I like what they did, but they didn't draft enough offensive linemen. So yeah, I don't know. But let's get into what is one team, and I guess it's hard to narrow it down, but like
hold on, I still got one of my least favorite pick yet.
Okay, go ahead.
So my third guy is first rounder. It's Tyler Booker at 12 to the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's a question.
It's the second time in 4 years they've taken an interior offensive lineman in the first round of the draft. Both times the guy's name was Tyler. Actually, 3 times in the last 5 years they've taken an offensive lineman named Tyler in the first round. So they've got a type. But so I had serious athleticism concerns with Tyler Booker.
Mm-hmm.
And let's set that aside and say he's fine and he becomes a good offensive guard. It's still not good value to spend the 12th overall pick on a good offensive guard. There's just not the surplus value there. There's so many more other important positions. And it felt like to me, Ted McMillan came off the board and that was their guy and they just didn't know what to do. And so they pivoted to Booker. And I think you could have got Booker a lot later. I had like 3 other guards ranked higher than Booker anyways. Mm-hmm. So like you could have tried to trade back and just get a Donovan Jackson, get a Gray Zabel, get a Tate Ratledge. Those are all guys I had ahead of Booker. So I didn't like that pick for them. I mean, take a Quentin Nelson with a top 12 pick, a guy that's a super clean prospect that projects to be an all pro until injuries kind of derail his career. Like take that guy maybe, but Tyler Booker, I didn't like that pick for the Cowboys. And honestly, I wasn't even super thrilled with Zabel at 18 to the Seahawks because it still just feels early for interior to me. But yeah. So that was my last guy that was questionable for me. So
no, I questioned that too. I was like, Tyler Booker, really? There were interior guys that I thought would have made a little bit more sense at that spot, but yeah, I don't. I agree with you on that. All right, so winners and losers as team wise. All right, so if you had to pick one team that you felt had won the draft or had an amazing draft class as a whole, who would you pick?
There's a couple that come to mind for me.
Yeah.
I'll say the Patriots.
Okay, good pick.
Now,
good one. Yep.
I do have questions about Will Campbell sticking at tackle in the NFL.
I do too.
So that wasn't my favorite pick. However, he played offensive tackle in the SEC for a long time, 3-year starter in the SEC. That alleviates some concerns for me. And he's the guy that it's like, if he doesn't stick at tackle, I have a lot of confidence he's going to be a really good guard. So at that point, is it the best value? Maybe not, but you think he can play tackle. That's why you took him there. And if not, he's got a floor as a really good guard. Travion Henderson, I really liked him going in the second round. They just need playmakers for the offense. And so you're investing around Drake May. You get an offensive lineman. You get a running back. They go wide receiver in the 3rd round. They go offensive line again. I thought Josh Farmer in the 4th round was a really good pick for them. Braden Swinson was probably one of the bigger steals in the draft in the 5th round.
Absolutely.
They drafted a kicker in the 6th round, but we don't have to talk about that. So, 6th round, who cares? Especially in this draft. But I liked what the Patriots did. I thought they had a solid draft. I thought their priorities were right, investing around Drake May early. But I still thought they got some really good value in the trenches on the defensive side on day 3.
1000%. We can talk about it might not have been like the best value early on, but like what you said is spot on. you see what they're trying to do. They're trying to give help to Drake May, which is absolutely, when you have a promising young quarterback who played as well as he did in his first season, you got to get him help. So again, maybe not the best value, but I don't think any of them were egregious reaches. The first 4 picks, offensive lineman, running back, wide receiver, offensive lineman, yeah, protect him. So good.
Yep.
Give him an explosive wide receiver. Absolutely. Now, I've said this online several times, and I talked about this in my ranking show. I am not as high on Henderson as most. I don't think he's as good as most people are making him out to be. I think a lot of it has to do with Ohio State and the school, so they're hyping him up. But that all being said, I 100% understand their mindset in taking him, because again, you give May an explosive weapon that he really needs that can, help alleviate something. Like they didn't have any weapons, and Ramondre Stevenson, who was one of my guys years ago, I love the guy. I love the way he runs, but he has fumbling issues, legit fumbling issues. I don't know how much they trust him there. So you need a running back that you can rely on. Henderson doesn't fumble the ball. Henderson is a great pass blocker. Henderson is good at as out of the backfield as a receiver, and he's explosive. So even though I can argue about the value, I will not argue about the fit and the need. So it's I 100% agree that they had one of the better classes. I agree with that. I'm there. They were on my list. Honorable mentions before I get to my one is, this, I really like what the Seahawks did, going back to the Milrow thing, the Emanwari thing. I love those picks. They got, I felt in my book, I don't know if you saw, I was going bonkers seeing him fall. Damian Martinez falling to the 7th round. Absolutely egregious. I don't know how he fell that far. Him falling out of the 4th round to me was that was where I was very questionable. Going in the 7th round is just crazy. So Seahawks honorable mention, but I think for me, you talk about value and position, or value and just vision in the draft and giving your quarterback a lot of help. My favorite class, draft class would probably be the Chicago Bears. Again, you're giving Caleb Williams as much help as you can. Tight end, Colson Loveland, my tight end one, going there. So he offers stuff that Cole Kmet just doesn't at all. Luther Burden, very divisive wide receiver. Very divisive wide receiver. Everyone has, it's either you're very low on him or you're pretty high. Luther Burden was one of my favorite wide receivers in this class because of the upside. Him going early 2nd round to a team like that, who I don't know how legitimate they are. There are reports about whether how the staffs or this regime sees DJ Moore. We'll see. But Luther Burden, just the upside there is so high. And then they got Trapilo, the offensive tackle, Shamar Turner, which is good value too, I think. In the 2nd round. So it's all, and then there's day 3 guys, good value, good, especially later on, really good value with some of these guys. And then I already talked about Kyle Monon guy in the 7th, so I thought that was great value. So overall, I look at their class and I'm like, A+ pick, A pick, B+ pick. They're I think their only reach was the linebacker in the 4th round, but whatever, it's 4th round, whatever. So I loved what they did. Again, another team with good vision to try to give help to their quarterback and their offense. And Ben Johnson saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I need the pieces. Let's go do it. So I loved what they did. I don't know what you think about them.
Yeah, you look at their offense right now, and you have DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Kyle Monangai as your running backs. Obviously, you have Caleb Williams, who you took super high last year, but then you can go 12 personnel with Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. You've got a wide receiver trio of DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, a guy that I loved last year, and Luther Burden. They have all the weapons in the world. And, Caleb Williams got to take a step this year. And that obviously there were some coaching issues in the past and some offensive line issues in the past. And the offensive line could still be an issue, but they've got a lot of weapons. And theoretically, they should be a fun offense to watch. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. I thought they had a good draft as well.
Yep. Any honorable mentions for like teams you want to say like did well too? I mentioned a couple, but I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I liked the Cardinals draft.
Yes.
Walter Nolan at pick 16. I mean, he's a guy that I really liked. Will Johnson at 47. He was a red chip player for me. I wasn't as high on Will Johnson as a lot of people, but I really liked him. And obviously, there's medical issues that made him fall. But when you're a team like the Cardinals and you're talent deficient in a lot of ways, you can take that risk in the second round. And if he hits, I mean, this guy was supposed to be like a top 5 pick after 2023. And obviously that didn't come together, but I thought they stacked 2 really good picks there on defense, you know, if it pans out. And there's some legitimate concerns about both of those guys, but that's where, you know, if you take that risk once, you might get burned. If you take that risk multiple times, it's likely you're going to hit on one of those guys. And so I liked their approach to the draft. And then, I mean, we say this every year, but the Ravens, the Ravens just always have good drafts. And I didn't think this year was really any different. You know, Malachi Starks at the end of the first round, Mike Green, who fell for some reasons that we don't have to get into, but on a film grade alone, I had him as a high first round grade. He goes near the end of the second round. Emory Jones, I thought was decent value at the third round. They threw some darts around the defense that I liked on day 3. Kone out of Western Michigan and Aeneas Pebbles from Virginia Tech. Those are some guys that I liked as well. So feels like we always say it about the Ravens, but I thought they had a good draft as well.
Yeah, good ones. Very, very good ones. All right. So flip side of it, in our last segment before we head out of here, I don't want to say, because I phrase it as team winners, right? Winners, you know, teams that maybe won the draft. I don't want to say lost the draft, all right? Because we don't know. And again, I'm more of like, I like to be a little bit optimistic and generous, look on the positive side. But let's point out some teams that had questionable or head scratching classes, for, you know, to say the least, that where you're just like, you don't know kind of like what they're trying to do. So name a team that comes to mind. I know we said the Browns. You touched on the Browns, and so that'll be one. Is there another team you look at and be like, I don't know what you're trying to do?
Yeah. The way you phrased that made me chuckle, because we always do on our scouting show, combine winners and losers. And one of the guys on our show, he's same way, just doesn't like that. So he kept saying this guy struggled a little bit. And so we changed the name of the show to combine winners and guys who struggled just a little bit. And we decided that, and like, that's what I put it in the podcast feed as, and it was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Saints as well for what I didn't like about their picks. So I'll go to a team I haven't mentioned yet. And it's for the same reason of something else I didn't like. And I gave my rule earlier. When you trade a future first round pick and it's not to go get a quarterback, I'm out. And it's the Falcons. Trading up at the cost of a future first round pick to double dip on 7th percentile weight edge rushers is wild. Especially, like, how are you going to get 2 7th percentile edge rushers on the field at the same time and defend the run? Like, that's barely possible. Especially when you have what is essentially a rookie quarterback that was seen as a reach last year in Michael Penix Jr. He started the final 3 games of the year last year, lost 2 of them, completed only 58% of his passes. If you're giving up a future first and it's not for a quarterback, I'm out. If you're doing it to double dip at one position with 2 guys, I don't think you can get on the field at the same time. I don't get what the plan is. This is Terry Fontenot on the hot seat. And this is why a GM should never be on the hot seat. Like I've said for years, the greatest asset a GM has in building a team is long-term job security. It's what allows Howie Roseman to take future picks and not discount them, because he knows he'll be here to make them, and he doesn't have to get reckless and make win now moves. The moment you as an owner start to have any doubt about your GM, immediately fire that person. Don't let them get on the hot seat, because what we saw last year, paying massive amounts of money to Kirk Cousins to then also draft Michael Penix Jr. in a massive reach, to trade a future first round pick you don't care about because you're probably getting fired after this year anyways. like it's just a bad place to be. The GM's job is to think long term, and when GMs start to think short term, the wheels come off.
Yes,
and we've seen it with the Saints, we've seen it with the Falcons. Now maybe they win their division and they make the playoffs and it becomes a late pick, but they haven't won their division. I think it's since 2016, and it's been one of the worst divisions in football in that time. So I hated what the Falcons did in the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. They were one of my teams I was listening to. It just too much to trade up for Pierce, and then so many people were saying, oh, like they wanted to target Pierce for the Eagles later on, and I guess that would have been more understandable with the 32nd pick. But I don't know about you, I wasn't that high on Pierce. Again, like he's just one-dimensional speed rusher who doesn't really bring but anything else to the table, in my opinion. So I can't put you in the first round at all. So trading that much for Pierce screams need, because everyone and their mother knows that the Falcons are desperate for pass rushers, like 100%. But to be able to force it like that is just very, very questionable. So I'm with you. I mentioned the Texans, how they needed more swings at offensive line. So there were, someone I'd also mentioned. I talked about the Browns. So there are two teams that I'm trying to decide on that I want to say, but for conversation purposes, I'll say this team, and I think the Steelers. Like, I don't know what direction they're trying to go in when they don't have a quarterback. And maybe they know stuff regarding Aaron Rodgers that we do not know yet. We're just speculating and assuming, okay, like if you're not taking a quarterback, a legitimate shot at a quarterback again, I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers is your answer, and that's a whole other conversation, whether that's a smart thing to do or not. But as it stands, he is not on the roster. So it is fair for us to question, what are you doing? Like, like, I did like Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon was absolutely great value, I think, where they picked him. No problem with Derek Harmon. Third round, I talked about, again, Jalen Milroe. They should have taken him. Like, make that a priority, right? I don't know why in the third round they felt they needed to settle with Caleb Johnson. Now, I know he went after, but it was only by 10-ish spots, I think, off the top of my head. Be a little bit more aggressive, and then do something. I just don't know. And Caleb Johnson in the third round is a good fit for them, for that Arthur Smith offense. So I'm not crapping on Caleb Johnson per se. That's a good pick there in a vacuum. But again, what is the direction here? What you come out of and in the fourth round, to your point, right? Once you get to the fourth round, you should be looking at Shador. Fourth round, you take Jack Sawyer. All right. Okay, he's a typical Steelers type of prospect. But if you have no quarterback, I'm thinking you and I would agree that Mike Tomlin is one of the rare coaches that has the pull and the authority to be able to handle someone like Shador, right? So why are you not taking the swing on Shador in the fourth round? Again, it's just a lot of question marks. Like, what are you trying to do? And if Steelers fans or whoever are going to say, oh, they're trying to just wait for next year so that they can go for that draft class, who's to say they're going to be in position to take a quarterback in that class? They're constantly winning and going to the playoffs. They're not a losing team. Like their floor is arguably as safe as any team in the league, because they are always going to win at least 9 games. That's just almost a guarantee at this point, because that's just the Mike Tomlin factor, right? So who says they're going to be within striking distance to take one of those quarterbacks? That's such like a projection and an unknown. You can't bet on that. So I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know with the Steelers, and just what you're really going to go into the next year with Mason Rudolph. Aaron Rodgers is really your answer for this season after what we've seen from him. I can't get behind their direction in this season. Right now I just can't do it.
Yeah, at a certain point, the Steelers are going to have to take the quarterback position seriously. And
yeah.
my biggest fear for them on day one is they were going to take Shedeur at 21 because I didn't think that would have been a good pick.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something. Like Will Howard in the 6th round can't be your response to the quarterback position. And so, maybe they bring Aaron Rodgers in. He stinks too. So, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Probably the same thing they've been doing for the last several years. Like, honestly, the best thing for the Steelers would probably be to play Mason Rudolph and be really bad so they can finally get a quarterback next year. But I honestly think I'd prefer that to them going out for Rodgers, but they probably won't. They'll probably go get Rodgers. They'll win 8 games, maybe 9 games, and we'll be in the 20s next year talking about what they're going to do at quarterback.
Yeah, that's I don't know. And I like the Steelers too. I have several people close to me that are Steelers fans, so I try to root for the Steelers. Class organization. I love Mike Tomlin, but it's just like, you need a quarterback. And if you didn't like Sanders, right? If you didn't like Shedeur enough to pick him in the first round, 1,000% understandable. I get it. But the common take out there was that they didn't want to gamble again because they failed with Kenny Pickett. I think that reason using that reason alone is just silly. Like, just because you struck out a couple years ago with Pickett doesn't give you an excuse not to still take a chance on some of these quarterbacks. Like, you can't go into that mind frame just because you got burnt once, right? Like, I can respect taking chances on guys because you're self-aware of, hey, like, we need to do something, than just sitting back and just trying to ignore the single most important position in the sport. Like, there's an extreme here where they're just neglecting it, and it worries me for them. It worries me for them. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with Rodgers, and it's just questionable. Any final thoughts to the draft class as a whole? Anything else that you wanted to get off your chest about, like, whether it be picks or teams or approaches, whatever?
No, I think I'm getting close to being all drafted out. It's always a bittersweet time to, like, do the draft stuff and all the guys you've been watching, and it's like wishing them farewell. And some of them you can't root for anymore because they went to your rivals, and so you can't like them anymore. But it's always a little bittersweet because you get that draft fatigue near the end, but it's like, man, I've been watching these guys and writing scouting reports on these guys for months, and it's all over now. And now we hit now we hit the dog days of summer where we're just waiting for rookie mini camps and training camp and all that stuff. And so I'm excited to slow down just a little bit, but I also can't wait for football to get started again.
Absolutely. We got roughly 2.5 months until we start to get into some training camp nitty gritty. So it's going to be, it is a nice break, like you said, after especially the grind of the draft. And, really for me, it's a sprint because I don't start draft work. I don't really watch a ton of college. So it's a sprint for me right when the Super Bowl is done. It's just like, okay, I'm just going, studying guys. And then this break usually in May is a good break, but it'll be fun once we see some stuff unfold over the next few months heading into training camp, and to see some of these guys, how they work out in camp, and some training camp battles and how things work out. So before we go, Shane, plug your shows and what you got going on over at Eagles Pinpoint Network over the next few months.
Yeah. So obviously our podcast feed, we're also on YouTube, but anywhere you get your podcast, the Eagles Pinpoint Network, we've got a lot of different shows going, and it's the off season. So the schedules are a little more sporadic, but we'll be back at 6 or 7 shows a week once we get into the season. And we've got a little bit of everything. We've got roundtable shows, preview, review, film shows. We try to get a little bit of everything for everybody. So there'll be a show that you'll like on our network. Come check it out. And then I do a Patreon with Johnny Page. We just brought on Eagles Eric from Twitter as the third guy into our.
Love that. I love that for you guys. Such a good fit. I gotta
Yeah.
get Eagles Eric on with me on the show one day. So yeah, I love that move.
Yeah, he's going to be doing a show for us on the public feed. He's going to be doing some written work for the Patreon. So at patreon.com/ontheshane if you enjoy film stuff, come check that out. We've got a lot of exclusive content that we put out in the Patreon as well. Podcasts, film watch alongs, mailbags, things like that. We've got a Discord server where we chat with people that I probably need to check because I haven't been on it all day. But we've got a good community of people there, so you can come hang out with us there as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you guys really do amazing work all year round. And, I learn from you guys a lot, and I love having you on, and I appreciate you coming on. And one of these shows, downtime, we're over here at Film Don't Lie. Like, we're a rather new show, but we're trying to build it up and with guests. And one of these shows we've got, what I like to do during the summer to kind of like have fun still is I like to do like rankings, whether it be, like for the upcoming year, or like one of the things that I did before was, best, I pick a position like best running back since like 2000. So I might pick that up, do something like that again in the summer. And, one of these fun shows when we talk about something, fun and interesting, I have to bring you and Johnny on again, especially when my co-host Pete comes back on. So I'll be hitting you up, but appreciate you coming on once more. It's always fun talking ball with you. I learn from you all the time. So I thank you again, and have fun taking a breath and relaxing for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. And for those you listening into ATD Radio, appreciate all your support as always. Make sure you check out all of our other shows. You can catch me live on Monday nights on Eagles Talk, where we talk birds. You can catch me on Film Don't Lie. This show Wednesday, it comes out Wednesday mornings, pre-recorded. Every once in a while, we might do a live show, so keep out for that. But here at Film Don't Lie, we cover the NFL as a whole. And for the other shows that you got, the hockey guys on Tuesdays, Wednesday nights, you got A2D Wednesdays with the other guys, and make sure we got you cover and listen in to all those other shows that we offer here at ATD Radio. But for myself, for Shane, for my co-host, who I miss, Pete, and for all of us other guys here at ATD Radio, and thank you for our sponsor again, Alonzi Travel. Make sure you hit me up if you're looking to book a vacation. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you in a couple weeks. No show next week. I'll see you in roughly 2 weeks, and we'll see what we got for you. But appreciate it. Until then, go Birds. Have fun. God bless. Peace out.